In this tutorial, we will be going over how the Biome tab works in the landscape generator and all the settings that are included with it. In the last one, we went over how the general settings, viewing settings, range settings, and all the rest of the settings worked in the home window, and an overview of all 4 tabs that you can get in the landscape generator window. Also, we went over how to set up and install the landscape generator, which is fairly simple. Okay, so let's go to our Biomes tab, just click on that, and we'll start here. So the first thing you'll want to do when creating a landscape is obviously you need to add at least one biome. So we'll just click the Add Biome button here, and then there is a slew of settings that open up. It's a little overwhelming at first, but it's pretty simple. Okay, so right here is where you're going to actually have access to your biomes. So if you have multiple biomes, there's a little scroll bar that opens up, and you'll be able to click on each one of them. So let's just go and remove these biomes. I'm just going to get rid of the rest of them. And we're going to click on this one. So the biome color is what specifies the actual biome on the biome coverage map. So if, well, I shouldn't have generated all of them. I should have just generated this one. But as you can see, it's just this one color on the biome coverage map because we just have this. But if I change it to a different color and I recalculate this one only, it'll recalculate the biome coverage map to fit that new green color. So that's what the biome color is. It's really what is used to index the biome. Colors are only accurate down to the 10th place. So you can have a lot of biomes, but once they have close enough colors, they will start to merge together on the biome coverage map and on the biome map, which means they will then start to merge together on the rest of the maps too, the biomes. So you want to try to avoid that, have nice vibrant colors, like a nice bright red and a nice bright blue like that, that you can tell apart easily. And don't have too many biomes. It doesn't need to be overwhelming to look good. In fact, sometimes it looks worse when there's lots of biomes. Okay, so the remove biome button is fairly simple. Click on this button and it'll prompt you if you want to actually remove it. You can click no, it won't remove it. You can click yes, it will remove it. And we almost got the same color that time. And you can click yes, don't ask me again, and that will that'll remove it, and it won't keep prompting you until you reload the actual window. Okay, let's move on to the biome name. This is pretty simple too. So if I want to, like a forest is what we'll actually be creating here. Meadow forest, I guess. So forest, meadow biome, you can call it. You don't have to have biome at the end. You just hit enter and it'll update it. You can change to whatever you want. This could be like, I don't know, a swamp. This could be, you know, make it white for like a snowy biome. I don't know. Whatever you want them to be. So let's go to our forest meadow biome here and move down to the general biome settings, which are these settings right here. So the use biome boundaries, was briefly explained in the first tutorial in the viewing settings when we turned on biome boundaries. So if you turn this on, you can actually visualize where your biome will be. And again, it's highlighted with that biome color that we saw before. I'll make that a nice bright green. Oh, that's a little too bright. Make that a nice green. Easy to recognize there. So this is if you want to have your biome in a very specific area on the terrain. It's not guaranteed to be there, but it won't show up anywhere else except for this spot on your terrain. And you can move this around, obviously. But we're not going to be using any of that settings or any of those settings because I don't care about being too specific about where my biomes show up. Usually won't use the biome boundaries, uh, but they're there if you need to. So let's move down to these two settings. Use density spots. If you turn that on and you go generate, you generate your all your maps here. Your biome will have density spots on the population map. Okay, I want those there because I like the effect of density spots, so I'm just going to leave that on. Then we're going to go down to biome type. I'll explain more about density and the population map in the generation tutorial. So we're going to move on to biome type. There are 4 biome types currently. There might only be 2 in the future because I might get rid of the beach and ocean biomes because they just aren't relevant and you can create them with normal biomes if you want a beach or ocean biome in reality with using the biome boundaries. So it would also give more use to the biome boundaries if I got rid of these 2, and it would be less cluttered in the generation or in the generation settings. So let's I'll briefly explain what each biome type is. It's pretty self-explanatory. The normal biome, it will just be placed down in a certain section of the terrain and will be sectioned off as evenly as possible. Right now it's just covering the entire map because there's only one biome and that's as evenly as possible with one biome. A beach biome, well, an ocean biome, let's start there first, will be generated, since there's only one biome, this won't work, but it would be generated uh, using the height map. It would appear only on the biome map. Actually, it wouldn't show up on the biome coverage map. The biome coverage map is only for normal and between biomes. But it'd show up on the biome map, and using the heights, it would determine exactly where it needs to be. So on the bottom 25% of the terrain, we have the relative water height set, so that's where the ocean biome would be set. Now, if you're using a beach biome, it comes up with a relative beach height here, and you can set this to whatever, and this will the beach biome will appear from 0.25 to 0.35 on the terrain. So right after the ocean biome because we're adding 0.1 to 0.25. You saw there. So let's go down to the between biome. Oh yeah, we have to have multiple biomes to use between biomes. You have to have at least 3 biomes, obviously. So if we have a biome, opens up a bunch of settings here. Actually, I don't know if these settings are fully covered in the documentation. Might need to update the documentation because of that. But I'll explain it right now. So the between biomes occur basically in between other biomes. So I have these 2 random biomes here. They have fairly different colors, which is good already. So I'm just going to have this be in between. I obviously don't want it to be in between itself. That wouldn't make very much sense. I'm going to have it be in between biome 1 and biome 2. They don't have names, so I'm going to make it a little easier. I'm going to call this swamp biome again and snowy biome again. And it doesn't have to be in between the 2 biomes physically on the biomes here. because you can select what biomes you want it to be in between. Obviously, it won't let you have it in between, be in between the same biome. Um, and you don't want to set it to be in between itself because why would you do that? That wouldn't make much sense. So I'm just going to show you here what they do. This should work. So for instance, this green biome is now showing up in between. Oh, why is it down there like that? Is that showing the whole map? No, it's not for some reason. Okay, that's working. So it's only in between the other biomes here. And it has a certain size. This map here is just for blending the height maps together so it blends it nice and smoothly. Why is it going down? It's weird. That is very strange. Okay. So if we go back to our in-between settings, you notice the biome is sort of small here, and maybe we want it slightly bigger. So if we just turn up the percent of the map here, we can then recalculate our biome coverage map, for instance, and it'll be bigger. Now this percent of map here, this percent of map option, is actually the literal percent of the map that the between biome will take up. So if we set this to 100, it might not generate. No, it will, but it will take up as much space as it physically can, and it will not generate correctly because it's trying to take up everything, and everything is not between everything, so it's obviously not working out perfectly. But if we set this to something very high, like 78, I don't know, maybe this will work. Obviously take longer to generate. But yeah, it looks like that's about as much as it's going to take up. Um, so this will basically just create biomes in between other biomes. This will work with any type of biome, so you can create biomes in between ocean biomes, in between beach biomes, in between normal biomes. You can even create between biomes and between biomes if you want to. So it's a pretty versatile option. This is good for if you don't want to have like a forest, for instance, go directly to a desert. You want a forest to dry out, and there could be like a sort of a dry biome, but it still has some plants in the middle. So we're just gonna stick to normal biomes for now and get rid of these because, like I said in the previous tutorial, we're only making one terrain with the demo assets or one biome with the demo assets. Let's move down to the height map settings. These are basically the same as before. You have your height curves, your height mass, your scale factor, octaves, persistence, linearity, and the curve mode. So if you just watch the previous tutorial on the height map base settings and the population map density settings, I go over exactly what these do and how to use them. If you want to see exactly how linearity, persistence, and octaves work, you can watch the tutorial that is linked in the documentation to how terrain generation works in the landscape generator and how it works with basic Perlin noise in general. Okay, let's go back to our biomes, and we're going to go down to Biome Textures. I'm going to try to get through these pretty quickly because I don't know how much time I've used up here. Let's look. Okay, so I've used up like 20 minutes already, so let's try to get through this fairly quickly because I don't want the tutorials to be too long. So the biome textures are have been completely reworked since the previous version. you can have infinite texture layers, and there are different ways to blend textures together to make it look realistic on your biome. So let's add a couple here, or just add a texture and explain how everything works, and I'll even give an example here. So let's just actually regenerate these. Okay, that looks good. So we have, if we go and generate our terrain actually, do I have something on in the viewing settings? I do. Okay, let's see here. So we have our terrain. It's all set up, and it's white right now. There's no textures on it. So we want to add some textures. If we add a texture with a texture blend type of solid texture, so just everywhere, with the value of 1, and we give it, I don't know, this grass texture here, just a green color texture I made. We don't have any normal values for it. That'd be a bump map you'd put there. If you don't have any, don't put it there. Don't fill that value. And we don't want to be shiny at all. So we don't want to use smoothness or metallic. It's obviously not a metal, and it's not shiny at all. And since it's not reflecting any color, the specular doesn't matter. The specular color would be the color it's reflecting due to the light, and it's just one color, so we don't need to offset it or scale it or change the scale at all. So let's go and just apply, I guess. And it'll do exactly what we expect, apply our texture everywhere. This isn't really a good example because it's just making it one color, but if we give it, I don't know, this texture atlas here, I don't really have any other textures. It'll tile the texture atlas over the entire terrain because this is one biome. Looks kind of interesting actually, it's striped, kind of neat. So, smoothness, if we turn this up, what that does is it makes it shiny. If we turn our metallic up without any smoothness, it'll make it more metallic, look more like a metal. And if we turn our smoothness up, for instance here again, make it shiny again, and have a specular color of red, for instance. It's not going to actually do much, but there should be a red tint around the edge. This might only work with the legacy terrain shaders, so you might have to use, I'm not very sure, but if we use a legacy diffuse, this might work. Let's go over here. Did that not apply the actual legacy shader? Maybe it didn't. Maybe I don't have the legacy shaders implemented here, but that's what it should do, especially with the legacy shaders. So yeah, we just want to change this back to our grass, and that's great and all, but we don't really have any sense of cliffs or any sense of height. We just have a green texture everywhere. So let's add another texture, and we're gonna actually change this to have a inverse slope blend, and this one to have a slope blend, and you'll see why in a second. Because if I change this to rock, for instance, or actually we're just gonna go with dirt, and I click apply with just the base settings here, you can see it gives us quite a difference here. Now, where it is flat on the terrain, or where there's less slope, there will be green, and where there is more slope, it'll be brown. That is because it's applying the slope blended texture, the one with more slope on the part with higher slope, and the inverse slope texture on the part with less slope. So if we just remove this for a second and we apply, you can see exactly where the green texture is being applied and how much of it is. If we go to our biomes, we add our texture again. Let's just add our dirt. We're going to change this back to slope blend. We don't technically have to do this. This just makes it so it's nice and not overlapping. Overlapping textures occur when you have, for instance, a solid value and an inverse slope blend. These are obviously going to overlap, so it's going to brighten it. To fix this problem, you would usually turn the value down or change the blend type. So for instance, turn the value down, it's not going to apply it as much. Oh, that's really bright. You can play around with the values and see what they do. You can also use slope min and max to fix these problems. So if we go back and we switch this back to slope blend and that to inverse slope blend, apply here, and we change the scale factor down to like 2, we hit apply, or no, we regenerate our height map actually, and we change the persistence down to, I don't know, 0.2. Okay, now let's apply, and now it's slightly flatter. It hasn't updated the slopes yet, so it looks slightly weird. Or actually, it did. It should have updated the slopes. So there's more green. There should be more green now. Let's see if I can get this even flatter, but not super flat. Maybe if I add a curve, and then I make it so there's a nice flat area here, fairly flat area, and then it spikes up at the very end. Let's see here. That looks pretty good. Oh, I guess not. Oh, it's because we have the height map base settings on. It's overlaying that extra layer of noise onto it. Now if we do it, it's going to look really drastic. Yes. We can see here that we get a slight terrace effect. That's what the smooth iterations are supposed to negate. As you can see, where the slope does spike up, it changes the heights quite drastically. So let's go back to our biomes here. Remove this. We don't need this. Oh. And generate it again. That looks pretty good, I think. So we're going to move on to the next step, which is adding objects. There's a bunch of different settings here that are completely gone over in the documentation, so if you want to read up more on how they work, read the documentation, but I am running low on time here. I should actually turn the smoothness down on this one and apply. That looks even better. So yeah, reference the documentation if you have any more questions about this before contacting support. So let's add some objects here. We're just going to add some general objects. I'm going to add them first, actually. And then I'm going to explain what I've done. If this even works. Oh, it's worked. Okay. So there's a couple trees. So that worked pretty well. for our first time. So what I just did is I added an object. I added a general type object. I did not add a detailed type object. I had a general object, uh, and it used the density mapping. Objects use density mapping to map where they're going to be. So if I just move up here a bit to see where the objects actually are. So it looks like they're somewhere around here. Now let's go to our generation window and open up the population map. And it looks about like what we would see here. See, there wouldn't be many objects here, and there wouldn't be many objects here because those are not included. Those are two extremes, and as we can see here, we don't have the super high whites and we don't have the super low blacks. But if I include the whites, okay, on the population map, and I apply, you can see that now it covers that area too. Or, per se, I want to include the blacks and not the whites. I could do the opposite. Now they're over here and not over there. So it follows the population map to show, to show where the objects will be placed. That's what the density mapping does. It's for having slightly different types of areas inside biomes. Let's move on to the min-max slope. The density spots are placed randomly inside the biomes too, based on the seed. Just for reference. You can learn more about density mapping also in the documentation. Any questions you have, you can read up on the documentation. Most of your questions will be answered in the documentation itself. I have a min-max slope here, and I turned it down so trees spawn on mostly flat sections. Obviously not right here. Whoops. If I just make my brush smaller, they're not here, or here, or even here. They're on the flat parts where the grass is. So it makes it look pretty natural. If I didn't do that, I included all the slope, and I applied, it looks something like that, and they'd just be everywhere. But you can see exactly where the density mapping is coming into effect. I actually don't know if I want to include density mapping everywhere. Good turn. I'm actually gonna put trees everywhere. I'm not gonna map them anywhere I want, or just in specific places. So now you can see there's trees everywhere on the train, just randomly placed. But if you want them more specifically placed with a specific slope, you can turn down the slope value. And that will apply them in only specific spots. And man, I should really turn that up a bit. So we've gone over slope, we've gone over density mapping. Let's go over height. That works basically the same as slope, but I want trees everywhere. I actually am going to want all my objects everywhere. That's basically the same thing, so works the same. Probability of spawning. This is how dense it is. For bigger objects, I usually keep this pretty low. Obviously, I have this on 2. Especially for trees, you're going to want to have this no more than 5 probably. But for smaller objects like rocks or stones, if you're using them general objects, you're going to definitely want it pretty high, like 25 even maybe. Definitely don't set this to 100 because that means there will be an object in literally every vertex on every single vertex of the terrain. And if you want to know how dense your terrain is, let's go with shaded wireframe. That means there will be an object on every single point of the terrain. So don't set to 100 on maximum terrain resolution here. So not on any of the lower resolution meshes up there, lower resolution level of details. Okay. So yeah, that's what probability does. That's what height, uh, density, and maximum slope do. Let's look at time. Okay. Um, and the bend factors for trees that have that enabled, wind enabled, and can use the bend factor, that's just for wind. These don't. So let's turn this up, the density up, to show you what it would actually do if we turned it way up. This might lag a bit. Oh, I guess not. Obviously, there's trees everywhere now. If you want trees everywhere, this is a great option for you, but I don't want trees everywhere. I might want to increase the minimum maximum slope a bit more though, just slightly. That looks nice. I like that. But there are a lot of trees. I am actually going to turn this down to 5. I think I like a bit more trees than just 2. That looks pretty nice. So, we're going to go to detail objects now. I'm going to go over them briefly. If you want to know more, read the documentation. These work the same as detail objects in on the normal terrain system. So if you go to your details and you add a grass texture or a detail mesh, it will come up with these settings. And most of them follow we have here pretty well. So if you want to use grass, either select grass billboard or grass. There will be grass meshes in the future. And Vertex Slits is where you can actually put in like rocks, for instance. And you can place them down massive placement. So if I put a rock in here, I think I have a rock. Yep. And I don't want it's obviously it's a rock, it's not a piece of foliage, so I don't want to give it a healthy and a dry color. I can place this down. The density per patch is a random density for each detail patch. Again, don't put this too high. It's like the probability setting. It works on probability, so you're going to want to keep it pretty small. The density mapping, again, I'm just going to map it everywhere on the terrain. Minimum and maximum slope, I'm going to keep this pretty high because rocks can be basically anywhere. And the probability of spawning, I'm going to put that, this is for each patch, so you want this probably higher. I'm going to put this at 80. This one you probably want higher. Let's check and see if that worked. Oh yeah, my rocks aren't set up to actually be detail objects, but if they were, they would work. So I'm just going to turn this back down to general. I don't want this everywhere, so I'm going to put this down to, I don't know, 30. What would 30 look like? Let's see. It's a lot of rocks, but seems to be working pretty well. I don't know. Also fairly linearly organized. Detail objects have the advantage of not being organized in a grid shape like this. While these do have random rotation and all that, detail objects can be a lot more specific. Like there can be a rock right there, or there, or there, or there. They're not so limited. There's way too many rocks here, so I'm gonna turn this down even more. Like, turn down 20. Seems to be fairly good. Gonna change this down to something more like 10, I guess. Okay. So this covers basically everything you need to know about biomes. If you want to learn more, again, read the documentation. And the next tutorial will be going over this generation tab and exactly how the landscape generator maps everything together. So, yep, see you in the next one.